All right, you modern humans, in this video, we go back to America and deliver the new nationalism, a speech originally given by Theodore Roosevelt. This is Speaking Through the Ages, where we bring back the dead in an attempt to bring out the values, beliefs, and internal struggles of those humans that came before. We give context to and deliver historical speeches that motivated people to kill, riot, make salt, and sign papers. Today, we have another speech from Teddy Roosevelt. Our previous speeches by Theodore were The Doctrine of the Strenuous Life in 1899 and The Men with the Muckrake in 1906. We have covered Teddy's upbringing and how he fueled the progressive movement as a member of the Republican Party. After a two-term presidency, Theodore Roosevelt retired from politics to travel the world and explore the relaxing hobby of big game hunting. After 2 years, he returned from his escapades and was determined to re-enter the political domain as a third-term president. He started by preaching on his new nationalism, which embraced the political and social reforms, but also accepted the concentration of economic power in big corporations. Roosevelt was determined to regulate, not dissolve them. Roosevelt wanted government to have a bigger stick to battle big business in the arena of power. The battle, in theory, would drive up the wealth of the nation at all levels, from the floor to the ceiling. In the next speech, The New Nationalism, he references John Brown, who is a bit of a controversial figure in history, not because of his cause, but because of his tactics. He was a religious zealot who believed he was an instrument of God, raised for the sacred obligation of tearing down the institution of slavery. Brown gained national recognition for his radical abolitionism and fighting in bleeding Kansas, which was a state-level civil war over whether the Kansas Territory should join the Union as a slave state. Later, John Brown and a party of 22 people attempted to incite a slave rebellion at Harpers Ferry. They seized the armory, intending to distribute weapons and arm the slave population. But having grossly misread the situation, only a few slaves joined his revolt. Brown asked both Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass to join him. Tubman was prevented by illness, but quite frankly, sounds like something she would have delighted in. But Douglass thought the whole thing was suicidal. But no one can deny John Brown was a man of action. His actions were a precursor to the Civil War and drew national attention to the ideological differences between North and South. And now, straight out of the history books, Theodore Roosevelt addresses a crowd in the arid air of Osawatomie, Kansas. The year is 1910. We come here today to commemorate one of the epic-making events of the long struggle for the rights of man, the long struggle for the uplift of humanity. Our country, this great republic, means nothing unless it means the triumph of a real democracy, the triumph of a popular government, and, in the long run, of an economic system under which each man shall be guaranteed the opportunity to show the best that there is in him. That is why the history of America is now the central feature of the history of the world. For the world has set its face hopefully toward our democracy. And oh, my fellow citizens, each one of you carries on your shoulders not only the burden of doing well for the sake of your country, but the burden of doing well and of seeing that this nation does well for the sake of mankind. There have been two great crises in our country's history. First, when it was formed, and then again when it was perpetuated. And in the second of these great crises, in the time of stress and strain which culminated in the Civil War, on the outcome of which depended the justification of what had been done earlier. You men of the Grand Army, you men who fought through the Civil War, not only did you justify your generation, but you justified the wisdom of Washington and Washington's colleagues. If this republic has been founded by them, only to be split asunder in fragments when the strain came, then the judgment of the world would have been that Washington's work was not worth doing. And it was you. It was you who crowned Washington's work as you carried to achievement the high purposes of Abraham Lincoln. Now, with this second period of our history, the name of John Brown will forever be associated. And Kansas was the theater upon which the first act of the second of our great national life dramas was played. It was the result of the struggle in Kansas which determined that our country should be in deed, as well as in name, devoted to both union and freedom. That the great experiment of democratic government on a national scale should succeed and not fail. In name, we had the Declaration of Independence in 1776, but we gave the lie by our acts to the words of the Declaration of Independence until 1865, and the words count for nothing except insofar as they represent acts. This is true everywhere. But, oh my friends, it should be truest of all in political life. A broken promise is bad enough in private life. It is worse in the field of politics. No man is worth his salt in public life who makes on the stump a pledge which he does not keep after election. And if he makes such a pledge and does not keep it, hunt him out of public life. I care for the great deeds of the past chiefly as spurs to drive us onward in the present. I speak of the men in the past partly that they may be honored by our praise of them, but more that they may serve as examples for the future. I do not speak of the struggle of the past merely from the historic standpoint. Our interest is primarily in the application today of the lessons taught by the contest a half century ago. It is of little use for us to pay lip loyalty to the mighty men of the past unless we sincerely endeavor to apply to the problems of the present precisely the qualities which, in other crises, enabled the men of that day to meet those crises. It is half melancholy and half amusing to see the way in which well-meaning people gather to do honor to the men who, in company with John Brown and under the lead of Abraham Lincoln, faced and solved the great problems of the 19th century, while at the same time, these same good people nervously shrink from or frantically denounce those who are trying to meet the problems of the 20th century in the spirit which was accountable for the successful solution of the problems of Lincoln's time. Of that generation of men to whom we owe so much, the man to whom we owe the most is, of course, Lincoln. Part of our debt to him is because he forecast our present struggle and saw the way out. He said, quote, "I hold that while man exists, it is his duty to improve not only his own condition, but to assist in ameliorating mankind." Unquote. In every wise struggle for human betterment, one of the main objects, and often the only object, has been to achieve in large measure equality of opportunity. In the struggle for this great end, nations rise from barbarism to civilization, and through it, people press forward from one stage of enlightenment to the next. One of the chief factors in progress is the destruction of special privilege. The essence of any struggle for healthy liberty has always been, and must always be, to take from some one man or class of men the right to enjoy power or wealth, or position or immunity, which has not been earned by the service to his or their fellows. That is what you fought for in the Civil War, and that is what we strive for now. At many stages in the advance of humanity, this conflict between the men who possess more than they have earned and the men who have earned more than they possess is the central condition of progress. In our day, it appears as the struggle of free man to gain and hold the right of self-government as against the special interest, who twist the methods of free government into machinery for defeating the popular will. At every stage, under all circumstances, the essence of the struggle is to equalize opportunity, destroy privilege, and give to the life and citizenship of every individual the highest possible value, both to himself and to the Commonwealth. Practical equality of opportunity for all citizens. When we achieve it, we'll have two great results. First, every man will have a fair chance to make of himself all that in him lies, to reach the highest point to which his capacities, unassisted by special privilege of his own and unhampered by the special privilege of others, can carry him, and to get for himself and his family substantially what he has earned. Second, equality of opportunity means that the Commonwealth will get from every citizen the highest service of which he is capable. No man who carries the burden of the special privilege of another can give to the Commonwealth that service to which it is fairly entitled. I stand for the square deal. But when I say that I'm for the square deal, I mean not merely that I stand for fair play under the present rules of the game, but I stand for having those rules changed so as to work for a more substantial equality of opportunity and of reward for equally good service. One word of warning, which I think is hardly necessary in Kansas. When I say I want a square deal for the poor man, I do not mean that I want a square deal for the man who remains poor because he has not got the energy to work for himself. If a man who has had a chance will not make good, then he has got to quit. And you, the men of the Grand Army, you want justice for the brave man who fought and punishment for the coward who shirked his work. Is that not so? The American people are right in demanding that new nationalism, without which we cannot hope to deal with the new problems. The new nationalism puts the national need before sectional or personal advantage. It is impatient of the utter confusion that results from local legislation attempting to treat national issues as local issues. It is still more impatient of the impotence which springs from overdivision of governmental powers, the impotence which makes it possible for local selfishness or for legal cunning hired by wealthy special interests to bring the national activities to a deadlock. This new nationalism regards the executive power as the steward of the public welfare. It demands of the judiciary that it shall be interested primarily in human welfare rather than in property, just as it demands that the representative body shall represent all the people rather than any one class or section of the people. The object of government is the welfare of the people. The material progress and prosperity of a nation are desirable chiefly so long as they lead to the moral and material welfare of all good citizens. just in proportion as the average man and women are honest, capable of sound judgment and high ideals, active in public affairs, but first of all, sound in their home, and the father and mother of healthy children to whom they bring up well, just so far and no farther, we may count our civilization a success. We must have, I believe, we have already, a genuine and permanent moral awakening, without which no wisdom of legislation or administration really means anything. And, on the other hand, we must try to secure the social and economic legislation without which any improvement due to purely moral agitation is necessarily evanescent. No matter how honest and decent we are in our private lives, if we do not have the right kind of law and the right kind of administration of the law, we cannot go forward as a nation. That is imperative, but it must be an addition to and not a substitute for the qualities that make us good citizens. In the last analysis, the most important element in any man's career must be the sum of those qualities which, in the aggregate, we speak of as character. If he has not got it, then no law that the wit of man can devise, no administration of the law by the boldest and strongest executive will avail to help him. We must have the right kind of character. Character that makes a good man. First of all, a good man in the home, a good father, and a good husband. That makes a good man a good neighbor. You must have that. And then, in addition, you must have the kind of law and the kind of administration of the law which will give to those qualities in the private citizens the best possible chance for development. The prime problem of our nation is to get the right type of good citizenship. And to get it, we must have progress. And our public men must be genuinely progressive. Theodore Roosevelt failed to win the Republican nomination against William Taft, the incumbent and future Supreme Court Justice. Theodore Roosevelt ran under the Bull Moose Party as an independent progressive candidate. Effectively, this split the Republican votes between Teddy and Taft, opening the door for Woodrow Wilson to slide into the presidency. Thank you for joining us during this historical moment. See you next time, where the dead teach.